Hello and welcome to the Live Better Connected podcast. Now, this is the 6th in our series, and today we're going to be talking about local government and mobile connectivity. Particularly, we're going to be talking about what it means for local government, the services that are enabled by it, and equally some of the topics such as digital inclusion and exclusion. Now, I am super excited to be welcoming to the podcast today Cllr Mark Hawthorne. He's the leader of Gloucestershire County Council and also the local government's digital champion across the nation. So welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Gareth, great to be here.
It's great to have you. Now, just for those of our listeners who don't know about the Local Government Association, I wonder if you could just give us a quick explanation of what the Local Government Association is and the work that it does.
So the Local Government Association, the LGA, is an organisation that represents all local government in England and Wales, all tiers, all types, and it is the voice of local government back into national government making policy. There's so much of what we do within local government we share. We have aspirations about the sorts of powers that we need, the funding that we need resolving, the issues around some of the services that we deliver. And that's what the LGA is there to do, to be that voice into government around what local government needs to deliver.
Excellent. And today we're going to be talking particularly about the digital connectivity, because this is something local government relies on, and also your residents and your businesses, and especially in a day now where people expect connectivity. Now, before we get into that, one of the things we've been doing and testing with our podcast people coming on is to take our Live Better Connected challenge. How connected are you? Now, I would have thought you're a bit of a pro user. Did you take the challenge, Mark?
I did take the challenge, and it surprised me because it's you start on your first question. I think listeners will know is how many connections do you think you have, and you make an estimate off the top of your head, and then you go through a series of questions. And you just keep getting to those moments, going, of course, yeah, oh, and I forgot about it. Oh, and that as well. And so by the time you finished it, I think I ended up with 4 times the amount of connections than I thought I had at the beginning. So it's really, really useful reminder of how connected we are.
That's really interesting, because I think this is one of the things we found going through with the whole challenge is that people's perceptions of how connected they are don't actually match with the reality. And that's how we've sort of grown as a society. We have more and more devices that we use and depend on every day. I mean, I'm just wondering, what were some of the devices that you were possibly shocked about or hadn't thought about when you were doing that challenge?
Well, just things like, I counted my mobile phone, but then I forgot, actually, I use my mobile phone then to connect into my car. I've got an EV car, so it controls when my car charges and doesn't charge. It streams my music. I use it to get around town, go on long journeys, part of the sat nav. I've got lots of devices all around the house that I keep forgetting are actually connected. Lights that come on and off when I need them to, even as a security purpose. So you just forget all these little things that you've just built into your life over years. And suddenly you realise that actually there's a huge amount every single day that is all about the connection that you make.
I think the one I found I hadn't really thought about most of is actually things like your speakers. We all go to talk about Alexa or Google or whatever these days, and we have a number of these around the house. Now, today we really want to talk about sort of mobile connectivity and councils, and I think when we think about that, some people think it's an invisible signal, and yet it actually powers a lot of what we do. I mean, if I was to say to you, what does mobile connectivity mean for a local authority, and how important is it? What would you say?
I think it's hugely important. I mean, the big role that local government's played over the last couple of years is around the delivery of infrastructure, whether that's fixed or mobile. And we continue to be a really important partner in the delivery of that going forward. But also what we've seen is a huge escalation of the utilisation of those connections. It's no longer a nice to have. It is a need to have. It is something that is essential to where we deliver services. Adult social care is a really good example. One of the things that's been driving local government for a number of years is how do we keep people in their homes for as long as they can? Because actually that's the best place for anyone to be. That's where you want to be, surrounded with all your memories. And technology plays a huge part in how we help support people in their homes for longer. And indeed, even if you sort of crystal ball gaze into the future, technology is going to be absolutely key around how we help support more people as the population goes older, live longer. But there's other things about potholes. Have you ever thought potholes and mobile signals were connected? But they are, because we have these gangs going all around our counties, filling in potholes in real time, getting data from the complaints they're getting in from residents, where residents are highlighting where a pothole needs to be filled in, straight onto a tablet. The gang goes out there, fills in that pothole, takes a picture, click, and it's all done by mobile connectivity. And you could go on and on and on. Fire services are clearly a really important part of the services we deliver, support people within their communities, really reliant on mobile connectivity. Even parking meters are all connected up in some way, shape or form through mobile technology. So you don't have to go to each individual parking meter to change it every time you decide to put the price up, which is obviously very unpopular and wouldn't do very often. But it's all those things that, again, it's a bit like taking the test earlier. You forget how connected councils have become.
Wow, and it permeates everything that we do. I thought it was interesting you sort of mentioned the potholes, because we've heard of the sort of phrase citizen journalism. I mean, this is almost citizen activism, which is enabling the council to carry out its services thanks to that sort of connectivity and engagement it has with its residents.
And it is part of, this is what people expect now. I mean, we're a generation, even our generation, Gareth, have got used to shopping via Amazon and being able to use your mobile phone to order something if you need it next day. And, people expect that from their services within local government as well. So Fix My Streets is something that we've just launched in Gloucestershire. It's a system that lots of councils use up and down the country. People can use their mobile phone to report a pothole. But what they also want is a bit of feedback to say, okay, thank you very much. We've gone out there and we fixed it. And that's what this technology allows us to do. It allows us, in a very real sense, to be better connected with our local residents.
And if you aren't connected to it, this is the big topic at the moment is digital inclusion. And you mentioned about people being able to actually get onto their councils because a pothole is there. But if you don't have that connectivity, you're out of that system. And you mentioned, shopping online, and we might sort of think it's rather blasé if you have that connectivity. But actually, you've got access to cheaper prices, you've got access to jobs, you've got access to education and healthcare. A lot of things seem to be now going via sort of GP apps on your phone to do that. I mean, how are you seeing that in terms of what residents have and use and that sort of permeation into everything they're doing? We've mentioned potholes, but that inclusivity part, how important is it to ensure people are included?
Really important. I mean, what we saw in the pandemic was a massive acceleration of digital take-up and digital by default in a number of the services that we rely on day in, day out. And what we saw through that was a huge amount of benefit for residents from that sort of approach, and almost an expectation that that's how it's going to be from now on. But there are pockets of communities where digital exclusion is a real issue, and it comes in two forms, really. There are some parts of the country which still aren't really as connected as the rest of us. We've delivered, I think, something like 96-97% mobile broadband connectivity. We've got really good mobile coverage, but that does mean there are pocket communities that still aren't connected, and that's going to be dealt with as part of the government's next phase of rollout. But there are also communities of high social deprivation where cost is a barrier. Being able to access the data necessary to be able to make those sorts of connections to public services is a real issue. So more and more local government is looking at how we can tackle this. We're not doing it on our own. We're working with organisations nationally like the Good Things Foundation to understand how we can help get into those communities and help make sure they've got the skills so they can get online, and then make sure they've got the connection so they can get on with their lives.
And it's an interesting point that it's not just connectivity that is a problem for digital exclusion. As you say, that there's skills, there's fear of the internet, there's trust as well. You mentioned rural areas. I think obviously we worth pointing out from an industry perspective on my side that we are rolling out the shared rural network to 95% of the UK's landmass. But one of the things we talk about inclusivity and ensuring people get connectivity. But it's very important that we also have the opportunity to build that infrastructure. People need to have and be close to that infrastructure to get the good quality of signal, get good coverage, and equally upgrading that infrastructure to ensure they have the capacity. Yet often we find that between the industry and local government a sort of a push and pull here of whether that infrastructure can be put there. People don't necessarily want the mast close to their home. I wondered, have you seen a change in perception as people have become more dependent on mobile connectivity and the infrastructure that is going in the ground? Because for a lot of people, they either don't necessarily need to see it or know where it is, but they very much object to it when it goes into in their locality. How do we sort of balance that?
Well, I think there was a really good piece of work done recently by the Digital Connectivity Forum, which was about looking at how local government can be an enabler for digital infrastructure. And there's lots of lessons from that. I think there's improvements on both sides, both in industry and at local council level, about how we can better communicate and talk about what we're both trying to achieve and do. I think from a mobile point of view, and I know that Mobile UK has done as part of its Better Connected or Live Better Connected. Sorry, I nearly got the phrase wrong there. Live Better Connected campaign. It's done a really good interactive infographic, just to show the importance of mobile infrastructure to people's day-to-day lives. And that's the message we need to get out there, because it is quite often people objecting to the installation of masks or objecting to the digging up of their roads to put in broadband. Quite often then the same people are complaining about the lack of mobile phone signal or really poor broadband connectivity. And somewhere along the lines, we need to make that connection so that people understand that this infrastructure is there to help them achieve what they need to do. It is frustrating for local authorities. 80% of roadworks are utilities. So we are the ones that quite often take the brunt of the complaints. But it is important we make the clear connection that this infrastructure is important to people. It's important to the way they connect with their friends and families, and it's important for local businesses and the way we deliver public services. And I think we just need to get better at telling that story.
And do you think people's perception of what the infrastructure that is being built is matches what necessarily is built? Because one thing I've found is that once it's up, people tend to walk by it without almost even realizing it's there. Or a lot of mobile infrastructure is built on top of rooftops, and the reason for that is so it's less visually intrusive. Again, it's that perception. Some people seem to, when I've talked on the streets, they say, well, it's going to be this big thing with these huge antennas coming out. It's ground based. When actually the reality is, in most urban areas, it's sort of monopoles, which are built to look and feel like a lamppost, albeit a little taller. I wanted sort of what's your sort of view of matching perception with reality?
I think you're probably right in that sense of that a lot of the installations, once up, are sort of blend into the background of the street scene. I think, and it is, as is always the case in local government, Gareth, you'll remember this when you were a council, it's the vocal minority that make the most noise, but the people you need to win over are the silent majority. And part of the journey on the silent majority is to explain what it is that you're doing, what it's achieving. I think what the Digital Connectivity Forum paper showed is too often industry and councils aren't good at telling the story of what's happening on the ground. So someone sees a planning application come in for a mobile phone mask and doesn't know it's part of a massive investment by telecommunication companies to improve coverage within an area. And there's that disconnect. And I think part of what the DCF paper said was we need to get better at improving that disconnect. And I fully buy into that, because I think once you explain that, as I'm sure you do as well, it's not, occasionally we get these questions, I'm sure, asked at parties when people know what we do for a living. And once you explain to people, they get it. Absolutely, they get it. They totally understand the need for it and totally behind it.
Yeah, no, I would concur with that as well. I think the report that you mentioned is an extremely important report. And it's one thing that Mobile UK itself is doing. We're campaigning for digital champions because I think we need people with skills at local authority level and who can communicate both with the industry. Because let's not forget, this industry works with a huge amount of jargon, a lot of acronyms. It's often very difficult to have that communication with the two sides. And there's work to be done on both. And I would fully endorse that. The reason why we're supporting digital champions is we feel that government should be providing central funding for those roles, but it also is there to help coordinate among internally within local authorities. And I believe the LGA also are supporting the role of digital champions.
Absolutely. I mean, if you go far enough back, and I've been around long enough now to remember the original broadband superfast program launched in 2010, I think it was. Local government was absolutely part and parcel of that program of delivering digital infrastructure. When that program came to an end and government moved on to its next phases, a lot of those skill sets started to disappear within local government because we weren't involved anymore. So we didn't retain those officers and the same volume. But what is emerging, and I think both local government, national government, and industry, which is really important, recognise now, is that the role of local government in making that infrastructure happen on the ground is absolutely key. That having a digital champion, and it's different to the role that was there when we were involved in the Superfast program. It's more of an economic development role now. It's about making sure that the bits of the council that providers need to plug into are lining up and supporting that infrastructure being delivered. But your research has shown, our research has shown, if you've got people like that in place, you get a better outcome both for industry and for the local area. And that's why we need them. We need them. And I think, to be fair, we are winning that argument.
I think I would agree too. I think it's clearly the importance of this, and we're not just talking about today. I think we're talking about in the future. The data usages on the network are going up and up and up, and as we've already talked about, it's about the amazing number of devices we have personally, but equally as we move forward into the industrial 5G sort of side of things, the Internet of Things, machine-to-machine connections, it's only going to get more. And again, on a local authority perspective, we talk about place and space. It's almost imperative that an area is connected to attract inward investments, to attract people. I wondered if just on sort of a jeopardy moment here is if a place isn't connected. I mean, what's the negativity that you see there? I mean, do people, in the pandemic, for instance, if you didn't have that connectivity, you couldn't work from home. You struggled to engage with the sort of changing dynamics of society and the way people were moving about. I mean, is that something you've seen at the local level?
I still get complaints now. I mean, there are clearly communities out there. I come from Gloucestershire. Anyone who knows Gloucestershire knows it's a really diverse and interesting place to live. The Forest of Dean is a particular difficult part to deliver. Parts of very rural on the Welsh border. There are communities there that are still struggling to get, even a decent broadband connection, let alone get a mobile phone connection. And I must get 2 or 3 letters a week from parish and town council saying, where are we on our delivery? So, and for them, it's because they see it as important as gas and electricity. It's a vital service now. It's not a nice to have. It's an absolute need to have. If you're working from home, and so many more of us are working from home now than we used to. Before the pandemic, I'd be in London maybe 2 times a week. Now I'm lucky if I go up there once every 2 or 3 months, because the connectivity that we can get through things like Teams and Zoom has just changed the way we work. And if you're in a rural location and you don't have good broadband and you don't have good mobile, you feel disadvantaged. And you are demanding, when am I going to get the same as everyone else? So it's still a real big hot topic within rural areas, especially those that haven't quite caught up.
Yeah, and again, it's getting that infrastructure into those areas, because often we find in rural areas, and I wonder how we maybe work with this gap, is that it is those areas which are hardest to build. Often you have areas of outstanding natural beauty, you have national parks, and the restrictions are even harder to build that infrastructure there, and equally sort of the objections to it, because this is the landscape, it is a beautiful landscape, but we still need to find, and I think local authorities are coming along, working with the industry to help sort of find locations that are right for building it, that don't impact on the industry. And I mean, not the industry, sorry, the landscape. But do you see that sort of being working much better these days?
I think so. Look, I mean, it's all about both sides realising they need to engage with each other. There is a genuine need as a local councillor and a local council to make sure that my residents get the services that they need, get the connectivity that they need. And I think industry is starting to realise that local government isn't there as a barrier, but it's there as if worked correctly as a potential partner to make that happen. And I think that's the space we get into. And part of my role is to talk to people like you, Gareth, talk to other digital network providers, and give them the assurance that local government isn't the enemy here. We are here to help. We share the same aspiration. Occasionally, we might have views and opinions about how that could be delivered better or how that could be delivered in a smarter way. But use us and utilize us, because actually we're trying to achieve the same thing.
I think that message of partnership is extremely important. And looking to the future in terms of ensuring that we do have this connectivity, are there areas where you have concerns of how to move things forward, or what are the main challenges that you're taking into national government, and particularly as we're looking now, potentially we have a general election next year? What's the main message you want to get to government about mobile connectivity?
Well, I think one of the big challenges, and I'd be interested to get your view on this, Gareth, is part of the things that local government worry about are, that transition. So at the moment, there are two big transitions happening nationally. We've got the digital switchover, which is happening by 2025. And then we've got the sunsetting of 2G and 3G. And that's going to have an impact on our members, because there's a big upgrade piece of work needs to be done there on our infrastructure to make sure our infrastructure still works when you have made those changes as an industry to the way those services are being delivered. So part of our job, if you like, is lobbying into government to make sure that the industry is working with us to make that as smooth as possible. Now, I think on the digital switchover, I think we've got some issues and concerns. Timescale is very tight. The number of devices that require switching over is several million within local government terms. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And obviously from Mobile UK, I'd be interested to hear what you think about 2G and 3G and the sunsetting there, to see how potentially you could help us, because we've just finished a survey, interesting enough. And typically within local government, there are people that are all over this. People who have never heard of it until they filled in the survey. And there's a lot of people in the middle going, okay, but I need some more information about what I need to do to be ready. And I think it'd be interesting to hear what you as an industry can do to help us on that journey.
Well, I think it's a good question to raise about 2G and 3G. So just for listeners out there, the 2G and 3G is some of the generational technologies that we utilise to broadcast mobile signals. Now, we've now moving from 4G and 5G is being installed at the present. So what the industry is looking at is how to utilise that spectrum that is currently being used for 2G and 3G and move that into the 4G and 5G spectrums, which are hugely more efficient, more data efficient as well. But there are concerns, and Mark, you're raising these about what that means. Now, if I can reassure people, the best way I can explain it is when we move from analog TV to digital TV, and it's very much the same kind of thing here. The industry is committed to retiring 2G and 3G by 2033, but 2G is not going to be retired until the latter part of that. So that is essentially calls and texts. So where 3G is closed, which is being retired earlier, if you have phones that are 3G only, you will fall back onto the 2G networks. You'll still be able to get your calls and your texts. But your 3G phone will actually then, especially if it has 4G capabilities, will suddenly receive a new enhanced 4G signal and a much better service. Now, for those that do have only 3G phones, the mobile operators are engaging with all customers to ensure that they will be moved over smoothly. And we are working with councils on other aspects of machines and things that use these technologies, such as parking meters, and those conversations are going on as we go. But I think the key thing here is to reassure what it is. Remember, it's repurposing. It's nothing's being turned off or disappearing. We are repurposing and refarming that spectrum into those more efficient and modern technologies of 4G and 5G.
Yeah, Gareth, I think that's really reassuring. I mean, the key again is always about making sure that everyone understands why something's being done. So the fact that 2G and 3G is about repurposing those bandwidths, so that I guess you could go on to more 5G and 6G going forward, is a really important message to get across. And as you said, the biggest risk, as so far identified, seems to be parking meters, but I'm sure there are lots of other bits and pieces out there as well, equipment that we need to upgrade. But I think it's a really good example of some of the things we're talking about wanting to continue to talk and share between local government and the industry so that we get these things right. So, I find it really positive. And again, it's part of what I'm here to do. And I guess it's part of what you and Mobile UK are here to do as well.
I would agree, and I think that's exactly, working together is the way to move forward. And I think the positive point here is we are moving into a future which is very much a bright future of some of the things we haven't even thought of at the moment. I just thought actually that question is sort of wondering, to put you on the spot at the moment, but where I wondered if there is anywhere where you have been particularly surprised or amazed at how a local authority or how a business or people locally have actually used mobile connectivity, because we've seen some, trying to sort of get the elderly, for instance, on board using digital tablets, which they're not used to, and then they've suddenly become whizzes, and they're doing more than even I can do on it. I wondered if there's a particular example of where you might have seen and you've been surprised by how mobile connectivity has enabled or helped or done something amazing.
The interesting about old people is as each generation goes through, they're more tech savvy. So when me and you get there to that stage where we're requiring adult social care, we will be used to Alexas and tablets and smartphones and all that kind of stuff. So, social services will have to be geared to meet our expectations and our skills. I think on surprises, I think some of the stuff, I was reading the case study where they've used mobile technology around augmented reality as part of a tourist offer. Which is really, really clever. I think it's down in Bath from memory, and where it's effectively you can use your phone to look back in time at certain sites and see what it would be like at its sort of Roman era. And I just think that is really clever because it takes that experience and takes it one step further. I mean, it's a bit like when we had the Pokemon craze and suddenly you had lots of teenagers wandering around high streets looking for catching whatever they were catching on their mobile phones. That technology, if properly utilised by local government, can be transformationary around tourism. And that's before you get into things like having smart buses where you have actual real-time indicators about when the next bus is going to rock up and pick you up at your particular bus stop. All these innovations that we can utilise through using the mobile networks. And that will only increase exponentially.
It's funny you mentioned the Pokemon. That was one of the things that really sort of changed and actually really brought 4G on it. If suddenly we had everyone out and the data requirements on the networks were huge because it was a fad. Everyone was out at different times of the day. We couldn't really predict it. But that really sort of brought in what augmented reality can do. And you mentioned sort of the tourism aspect and the history element. One of the others I've heard is Sherwood Forest, where you can go and put these augmented reality and almost go battling around like Robin Hood in that forest as you see people running around. The opportunities are endless here. So, and just one other aspect I just thought, whilst we've got local government on here as well, that I'm particularly interested in is as we have seen people move to more mobile dependent livelihoods and living the websites, particularly at local authority, often aren't necessarily as mobile friendly as they could be. And one of those aspects of getting and accessing services from councils is often on our computers and accessing our council tax or our bin services or garden waste. Do you think there needs to be more to be done to actually make websites mobile friendly as well? If people are only, because 21% of households now only access the internet via a mobile.
It's absolutely true. In fact, it's a good point you make there. And you didn't notice when you asked this, but we've literally just upgraded our website here at Gloucester County Council onto a new platform, which is mobile friendly. But you're absolutely right. It is a really important thing that councils will be doing as they upgrade their technology. And a lot of councils upgrading their websites, that will be a very complicated business, because it isn't just about clicking onto a website to get some information. You'll know as well from your time, these are transactional websites. They're dealing with millions of pounds worth of transactions around adults and children's, around parking, around all sorts, leisure, all sorts of things. So they're quite often very complex things for councils to updo. But you're absolutely right. That's the way it's going. Fix My Streets, which is something we've just brought in Gloucestershire, is a mobile friendly app, and it's about utilising citizen power to help you identify every pothole that needs fixing within a locality. So it's going to be part of the norm, if I'm being brutally honest, as we go forward. And part of what we're doing as local authorities is trying to capture all of those opportunities.
Well, Mark, I'm happy to say that I could plug in Gloucestershire County Council there as leading the way, and Mark, in your role as a national digital champion, leading the role nationally for local government as well. Now, so thank you very much, Mark, for being with our podcast today, and thank you all for listening. Please subscribe to get alerts for future episodes, and if you would like to be a guest on the Live Better Connected podcast, please get in touch with our team here. We are looking for experts and business owners that use mobile connectivity in interesting ways to complete their day-to-day lives. And as we've heard at the very beginning, if you are interested in looking at how connected you are, and I'm almost guaranteed that you'll probably be more connected than you think you are, please do look on the mobileuk.org website and take the How Connected Are You challenge, and link in with our various social media channels too. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mark. And we will see you at the next podcast.